This is Target Score Weekly with Joey Slattery and Taylor Allen. Welcome to episode 4 of Target Score Weekly with myself, Joey Slattery, and Taylor Timothy Allen. That's your middle name, right, Taylor?
That one's news to me. It's actually Michael, and funny enough, it's actually Michael because of Michael Jordan. That's why my dad picked it. Born in '92. That was starting around the time where he was doing his thing. But Timothy, I can't say I've heard that one before.
I figured it was Timothy because you were born in '92, which would have been a year after the successful run of Home Improvement, and your name is the last name of both Tim Allen's fictional and real life name. Because it's Tim Taylor in the show, Tim Allen in real life. So I just figured Timothy's his middle name.
I did not see a Home Improvement reference coming in the opening minute of the show. So kudos to you. Well done.
It's because it just came out on Disney Plus, and I've been watching a lot of it.
Oh.
Yeah. Also, you want to know another funny note before we get right into things? I had a live hit on CTV the other day, courtside, for, I believe it was the Montreal game. Maybe it was the one. No, it was the one against Saskatchewan, the Rattlers. And right off the top, I said, talking about Teddy Allen, I said Taylor Allen, and I didn't catch it off the top. So I dropped your name. I had you on my mind as I was going on live TV. I later on corrected it, but I definitely did say Taylor Allen having a huge season.
Well, we are very similar basketball players, so I could see how you can make the mix-up. But actually, I'll need to channel some inner Teddy Allen in about a month from now. So there's that. I was telling you about this the other week. There was that Run It Back basketball tournament, that high school alumni tournament that's going down at the Sport for Life Center, and I was asked to play for the Maples Collegiate alumni team. And I'm 30. I know I'm getting up there a little bit, but I didn't think I'd be the oldest guy on the team. But sure enough, I am. So basically, I'm calling myself the Udonis Haslam of the Maples Marauders. But yeah, I was at the gym today at Sport for Life, actually. Running some laps and stuff, trying to get into some shape. So yeah, next time I might see Teddy, though, I'll have to ask him for some tips because his jumper is a little nicer than mine.
I say the resemblance uncanny on so many levels, Taylor. It's really hard to tell between the basketball personalities, you name it. But congratulations on being captain of the throwback Maples Collegiate team.
Whoa, not captain. Not captain.
Nah, your target score has declared you captain. People are clapping. You're captain.
I'll take it. Appreciate it.
And you're back home. You're in a nice, comfortable setting for the podcast today. That's good to see.
Yeah, my apologies to all of our target score listeners who, by the way, we kind of been diving through the numbers. We got some listeners from across Canada, which is really cool. Quebec, Ontario, Alberta, and of course Manitoba. So BC, thanks to everyone BC as well. Yeah, so thanks to everyone that's been listening. But yeah, last week, in the McDonald's parking lot in Sioux City, Iowa, I'd imagine I'm the very first person to say they've recorded a podcast in that situation. So I'm home now, sitting in my studio, I guess we'll call it, and yeah, so hopefully this goes a little smoother this week.
A true pioneer, Taylor Michael Allen.
Taylor Michael Timothy Allen, actually, but
Well, hey, it was a huge week ahead. Let's go through the rundown here real quick. For the first time ever, Taylor, in the show's history, the Sea Bears have gone 2-0. Not a single loss between episodes, so that's a first for Target Score Weekly. On Friday, Winnipeg hosts Montreal after losing to them earlier in the season. They get their redemption with a nice, convincing 96-88 win in front of 5,428 people. And not long after, a bit of a quick turnaround, they play a matinee against Calgary, a team that they lost to in Calgary early in the season, and they came out flying and had another redemption game. Back-to-back redemption wins. They beat Calgary 100-75, and in that game they had a almost record. They set the record with more than 7,000 in the first inaugural game. On Sunday they had 6,352 people in attendance. Absolutely great. And with Saskatchewan, the Rattlers losing on the Saturday, the between day, they didn't even need to win that Calgary game. They had already punched their ticket to the playoffs. So the Winnipeg Sea Bears, in their first season, are playoff bound. They clinched that on Saturday. They put the exclamation mark on Sunday. With that, we'll take a quick look at the CEBL standings. Of course, Winnipeg leading the Western Conference with a little bit of pad now. 11 wins, 6 losses. Calgary in second, 500 at 8 wins and 8 losses. Edmonton Stingers hot on their tail, 8-9. The Rattlers still clinging on to playoff hope at 6-10. Vancouver 5-10. Doesn't matter, as we've mentioned in the show before. They automatically get a spot in the Final Four because Vancouver is hosting championship weekend, the weekend of August 11th through the 13th. In the Eastern Conference, Ottawa Blackjacks kind of running away with things right now. They're 12-5. Looks like they're going to lock up first place in the league. Niagara River Lions 9-7. The Scarborough Shooting Stars 8-7. The Montreal Alliance, again, trying to claw into the playoffs. 7 wins, 9 losses, and the Brampton Honey Badgers still holding on to hope, though they are last in the East at 6 wins and 9 losses. So that is how your standings shape up for this season, or for this week. Now
You should
Taylor,
work in a TV, I think, with that rundown. That was well done.
Hey man, might have a future in that. Who knows? Eh?
Yeah, you might. Yeah.
Yeah, because Lord knows I wouldn't be a good writer. I hate writing long form. I'm so jealous of you print guys and how you can put together these full long stories. I got to write around clips. Pretty simple stuff in my world.
I can't verbally string together a sentence, so
Neither
there you
can
go.
I. And I got a job
a
in
little
TV
better
and
than me. A
radio.
little better than me. So
First off, before we dive into the games, we have to talk about that crowd. I dropped the numbers during the rundown there. More than almost 12,000 people showed up in 2 days from Friday night to Sunday afternoon. 11,780 total over those 2 games. They sold out a Friday night, and then they super sold out a Sunday night, having to add more tickets for the Sunday because the demand was so high after that Montreal game, and I'm sure that playoff clinching helped as well for that game against Calgary. Like, man, there is a market for this, and there is definitely a big population that is not going to the lake every weekend that is hungry for basketball to go to back-to-back games, and they were treated to a couple of dandies.
And it's not even just the basketball community that's going to these games and enjoying these games either. Like I had a friend of mine text me yesterday saying that they're a big sports fan, but they're not really a big basketball fan. But they went to Sunday's game, and they brought a friend of theirs who isn't really a basketball fan at all. And he said they just had an absolute blast, and that his boss, went to a game the week before, and he had such a good time that he bought 10 tickets to the next game as well. And, I was speaking with someone today from the curling community, and they were saying, I got to be honest with you, basketball's never done anything for me. Don't really care about basketball, but I was reading your article today about the Sunday's game and the atmosphere and stuff, and I'm actually kind of interested in this and following what's going on with these guys now. So yeah, it's really picking up steam, and it's crazy. They're only 3/4 of the way through their very first season, and you could probably make the argument that they're already maybe the model franchise in this league. I mean, just the atmosphere of these games, the attendance that they're getting. I think I said this the other week too. When I find now when I drive around town, I often see people wearing Sea Bears hats, Sea Bears shirts, and whatnot. So this thing is definitely working. And David Asper at Sunday's game, he came out, he walked past the kind of the press row and tapped me on the shoulder to say hello, and he was grinning ear to ear, and he asked me how I was doing. I was like, well, I'm doing good, and I could clearly see why you're doing good, because I mean, look at this place, right? So yeah, like it's actually one of my favorite parts though, when I am at one of these games, is that when I do look in the crowd though, there is such a great representation of the basketball community as well. So for example, I'll be sitting there and I'll see, oh, that's someone I used to play basketball against, 10 years ago, or when I was a kid or whatever, and stuff like that. So yeah, the atmosphere has been top notch. And, Teddy Allen and Glenn Yang were even talking about it after Sunday's game, saying, Teddy was saying how, guys from the opposing teams will come up to him during the game and say like, man, this feels like an NBA game. And Glenn was saying how they'll be on the road and opposing players will come up to them and be like, hey, is it really that good over there in Winnipeg? Like, what's going on and whatnot? So that, plus the facilities that they have with the Sport for Life Center, and of course, playing in the biggest arena in the entire league at the Canada Life Center, word is getting around. And I think, this past year, Mike Taylor, there was a lot of guys that he did reach out to that, said thanks, but no thanks, because it was such a question mark, this brand new team, new market and everything. But the way that this has been going, I think people are going to be reaching out to Mike Taylor to be playing for the Sea Bears, and not so much him, trying to beg and plead someone to take a chance and come to Winnipeg. So it's been cool to see.
Well, I'm interested to see how that All-Star game goes at the end of August in Quebec City, which, was in, as far as I know, this is a testing ground, right? In terms of a franchise going to Quebec City, and they have the Videotron Center, which has been well documented. They want an NHL team, and they built an NHL arena. And for the Quebec Remparts, I remember the last few attendances were like 17,000 plus, right? I don't know if they're going to get that for basketball, but it'll be interesting to see now that Winnipeg's kind of set that standard with a professional arena. Will another kind of diehard, and we know how, in French Canada, how passionate those fans are when it comes to hockey and sports there in general. And Quebec is a big basketball province, so it'd be interesting to see. They get a great turnout at the Verdun Stadium for Montreal, and this one will be even bigger. So then I wonder how many teams Taylor will end up thinking, well, we have NHL facilities down the road. Is it worth it now for us to increase capacity or anything like that if we play there? Because Winnipeg is showing that it can work. Some teams I don't want to see do it. Like, I think Edmonton's got a great atmosphere at the Expo Center there. They call it the Flair Airlines hangar. Like, that is a really cool vibe. And I know, talking to Simon Hildebrandt after the 19-point game, he said it was a really cool environment to be there. How they pack that place. It's a little bit smaller, more intimate. It's very loud. So, each team has something that works. But, this is what they've done in Winnipeg is absolutely incredible. And honestly, Winnipeg's been treated to some really good basketball. You named one of those guys, Teddy Allen. Another incredible week. I mean, we could just make this a Teddy Allen podcast, it seems, with the consistency he's had this year. Even his off games, he hasn't had a game where he scored less than double digits. This week, though, he had 33 and 37 points respectively in those two games. So combined 70 points he had in just 2 games. This guy is on fire, man.
I think, well, there's still a couple of games left to be played, so maybe I won't put my stake in the ground just yet. But I mean, how is this guy not the MVP? Like, it is absolutely incredible what this guy's doing. Never mind just scoring the basketball. Every week we talk about that, of course, but then there's just so many other things that he's doing well at the same time. And we were kind of looking at some numbers before we got going here, and he's second in the league in points per game. He's 10th in assists. He's 5th in rebounds, 5th in free throw percentage, 1st in minutes played, and 1st in 3-pointers made. He's literally doing everything. And it's funny, after he has one of these big games, which seems to be almost every single game except for the first one, basically, he says, like, he's just cool, calm, and collected, man. Like, he's just like, yeah, that's what I expect from myself. And it's like, well, were you just like in the zone tonight or something? He's like, no, I'm always in the zone, and he doesn't say it like in an arrogant way, though. Like, the way he speaks about his performance and his play, like, he's not like, it doesn't come off like he's a cocky, arrogant kind of, one of those guys. It's just like, he's super confident in himself, and rightfully so. And he's putting it all together this year. And, Mike Taylor trusted him to be the go-to guy on this team. And he has taken the ball and run with it. And he's been the face of the franchise. And he's just so much fun to watch as well. I mean, we were talking about how many fans they've been getting and stuff, and would it be this big of a success this early on if they didn't have, kind of a face to the team right away, a guy that, that's so, head and shoulders above most of the players, that they compete against on a nightly basis? I don't know, but like he's definitely played a big factor in that.
I remember last week you did bring up like one thing. It was, like a minor criticism, just how much he shoots though, right? Like, he does put up a lot of shots. And because I actually laughed the line, because who were the Smush Parker and who did you say? There's a couple.
Kwame Brown.
That's it.
Lakers legends.
And those bums, as it was said, I was dying. But one of the things I love though, color commentary, Dave Crook, who does a great job with Christian O'Mell, who's the play-by-play for the CBears. He says there is no bad shot with Teddy Allen. And I kind of tend to agree when you're putting up those kinds of numbers and it's not costing you games, because he's still affecting the game in other areas. Like, he's still playing defense. He's still disruptive on defense, creating turnovers, creating points in transition. He's getting his assists there too. I think he said he's top 10 in assists. So yeah, like, I kind of like that analogy. I never thought of it that way, but he's like, there's no bad shot for Teddy Allen. And I'm like, you know what? Honestly, when you're putting up 30 a game and you're winning these games, can you really argue it? And he does, like, some of the shots he puts up is just, I don't even understand how they win. And there was one shot I remember against against Calgary, where it looked like he was already behind the backboard. And somehow it wasn't even looking at the rim, and he put it up, and the ball just came out of nowhere because there was a crowd of people, and the ball just kind of goes up gently off the glass and drops in. I was just like, man, this guy, next level. But yeah, and talking about the MVP race, it's hard to argue against him at this point. I mean, just from the points aspect, the top 4 Well, the top five, if you take the top five scorers, you've got Justin Ray Foreman, who's number one with Saskatchewan at 29.1. Then there's a drop between Teddy and number three, which is Cat Barber and Scarborough. Those guys are fighting for playoff lives if they even are. Like Brampton and Montreal, like might be on the outside looking in. Teddy's done this to the team that is first in the league. I think Kadre Gray over in Ottawa probably gets a bit of a nod too. Like that guy facilitates a great team. I wish he was almost in the West so we watch him play more. I do like Ottawa's style of play. They're a fun brand of basketball. They also have a few guys on that team that could probably be vouched for too. That could make a run for MVP. But I think Teddy's definitely high up in that conversation, and I imagine he's leading it right now. I think it's his award to lose with the season they've been having. But without further ado, we do have to get into these games. So we'll start with the game against Montreal. That was Friday night at Canada Life Centre. So recap one more time. That game on Friday was a Winnipeg win. 96 to 88, Taylor, that game was for Winnipeg. And if you recall, Winnipeg coming off the national game against Saskatchewan that was in our last episode was a tough loss. Justin Wright Foreman, we were just talking about him with that big three to win the game. But they really did bounce back in a big way on Friday.
Yeah, it's not so much that I think there is such a thing. I agree. There really is no such thing as a bad shot from Teddy Allen, and let him shoot 20 plus times a game, and it's been working most of the time anyway. So by all means. But really, my main argument was that you can't just rely on this guy every single night, because if he has an off night, especially in the playoffs, your season's over. So we've been talking about this for weeks now. They need some of these Canadian guys, some of these other guys, these role players to really kind of step up and contribute and not just be the big three. And this Montreal game, what happened? Simon Hildebrand has one of his best games of the year, scores 15 points, 7 boards, and he hits the game-winning bucket as well. And what happens when someone not named Jelani, EJ, and Teddy step up and have a big game? It seems like the Sea Bears win every time, basically. So that is music. That's got to be music to Mike Taylor's ears when he does get a performance like that from a guy like Simon, who we've talked about this many times. He's had some flashes, but there's been quite a few moments too where the moment seems a little too big for him. But yeah, that it seems like he's really kind of starting to find his groove a little bit and be more confident. Because he's had, I know Sunday he didn't really follow it up with too impressive of a performance, but you can live with that if a different role player steps up, which was Glenn Yang in Sunday's instance. But we'll get into that later. But yeah, this Montreal game though, it felt like it was the Sea Bears game the whole way through, kind of for the most part, and we're getting to target score time. But then Montreal just gets super hot from deep, nails a bunch of threes. Ahmed Hill was unconscious towards the end of that game, it felt like, and made things a little interesting. But yeah, so you could tell though when Simon though did finally get that game winner, that meant a lot to him. I couldn't imagine being a guy that age, playing for your hometown team, getting to experience something like that. I mean, that's pretty damn cool. But yeah.
Well, even in that game too, like Montreal, I think the biggest knock on Montreal right now is they have no depth. Like it's like their bench points, they were outscored 29-4. So, if you look at them, like you're depending, Travion Graham was back. That was a huge addition because I think that was his first game back against Winnipeg. He had 11 points, but Ahmed Hill, 26, Nathan Kayo, 28, Alain Louis, 8. And I'm going to mess this up. Elijah Efege, I can never say it right. Anyway, 11 points. But like the starters were the only people that put up anything. They literally got 4 points from guys that are not on the starting lineup. That is crazy. And even the time-wise, the bench, I think there was one guy on their bench that had 12 minutes. The other one's a minute 30, 6:26, 9:31. Their starting lineup, 40, 35, 35, basically 36, 34, 24. Like they did not have much help, and to credit to them for coming alive later on in the game. But to go back to Simon Hildebrand and just the impact of his performances, the big ones that he's had, they're needed. This is an 8-point game, Taylor. He doesn't have that game, right? Like you can make that argument with anybody, but it seems that he steps up in impactful times. This isn't a 25-point blowout or 30-point blowout where he put up 15. Like this is a game that ended up being relatively close, and if he has a 1-point game like he did the next night, well, that changes a lot, right? So he's having impactful games when it matters. Jelani, though, had a huge bounce back game, and credit to him too, because I know there was a lot of pressure on him going into that game that he's not used to this season. A goose egg on national TV against Saskatoon where he just wasn't himself, 2 3-point attempts, and then I don't think he shot for the rest of the game. Then he comes in 5 for 10 from the field, 50% from the field, 4 for 8, 50% from 3-point land for 14 points, 22 minutes, 23 seconds. Jelani with another great game. And of course, EJ had another 19-point banger. EJ Anasike, kind of like the Teddy Allen, a different realm. Those two guys have just been, stalwarts for this team. So, I was really impressed with that. But I think defensively too, look, they had 6 points from turnovers, 15 second chance points, and 32 points in the paint. Montreal still had 38 points in the paint, 6 on their second chance points, and they had 10 from turnovers, but that could be a lot worse, right? They had 8 on the fast break to Winnipeg's 4, but the thing is, they really contained Alain Louis. Alain Louis had 8 points. What was he for assists here? 9 assists, which is still really good. But they really focused in. I just didn't feel like he was as exciting as I've seen him, on television, or the last game they played. He didn't seem to get that rhythm momentum going where he was, kind of taking over, but he still, can't gawk at the points put up by Ahmed Hill and Nathan Kayo, 28, 26. But at the end of the day, all you had, they can score. That's all they had. As long as you had more guys scoring and you were able to give guys rests with guys that can come in and have impact games. I don't think Teddy Allen, Glenn Yang played the most minutes that game at 33 minutes and 57 seconds. So a lot of guys got 7 minutes break. EJ only played 30. Well, he played 31-48. Teddy played 33 minutes, almost even. So, they had the guys step up, and it was just a matter of, hey, man, outrun, outgun, because defensively, those guys are really good. The game before when they played Calgary, I think it was 77-74 was the final, whatever it was. This time they got up to 88 points, but Winnipeg scored 96 against a team that could be pretty tough defensively. So, props to them. Props to Mike Taylor for putting that game together.
I thought the game Winnipeg lost in Montreal was actually probably one of their most frustrating losses of the year, because really they should have won that game. They had it at their fingertips, but just in the target score, I should say, they were just really disorganized on offense and kind of making some kind of poor decisions with the ball and whatnot. So I was kind of eager to see how they would bounce back against Montreal, and sure enough, they did. But Simon is a guy, though, that we've talked about a lot and whatnot, and he's had some performances now. But AJ Hess, though, is a guy that I feel like we haven't really seen that huge kind of breakout game from him quite yet.
Well, you felt like that Sask game, he might break out, right? I think that was the game where he had 15 points. It seemed like he was starting to heat up. You kind of hope that was his foundation. But, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like Mike Taylor's got a little Ted Lasso in him. You ask him about it, and, AJ he does so many great things. Glenn Yang does so many great things. And, he really has his players' backs and really, likes these guys as people and, the stuff that doesn't show up on the score sheet. But, at the end of the day, I don't know if you can sugarcoat that. There's a guy that's just, struggling. That's what it is. This guy has a record of being a great shooter, a good scorer, and it's just not panning out this year for one reason or the other. I don't know if he's getting in his own head. He does seem to be frustrated more and more as he's coming off the bench or coming onto the bench.
That's an understatement.
I think it's really starting to get to him.
He seems frustrated, honestly, 90% of the time on the court. He's quite often using 4-letter words, if you know what I mean. When he's by
with two ends.
Yeah, by the scores table and stuff, he's frustrated. He's very, very, very frustrated. And I was curious what his numbers have been in other places that he's played, because I mentioned this before, but you look at all the guys, all the resumes of the guys on the CEBL. He has one of the most impressive resumes out of all of them. He played in the G League. He's played in Europe. He played well in college. And so I was curious, what was this guy's shooting percentage before he got here? And he was playing in France last season, and he shot 45% from 3, which is really, really good, obviously. Yeah. And this year he's, shooting 30%. So is this league? I mean, this league could be higher quality than that French league. I'm not too sure, but I mean that's a 15% drop off is pretty big. And then you look at his 5-year college career between Southern Utah and South Dakota State, and I know the CEBL is more competitive than that, but he shot 37% from three in his entire college career. Sorry. So, yeah, this is his worst shooting percentage that he's had anywhere. So who knows? Maybe he might flip the script here. There's still some time for that, but we're kind of running out of time here. And I just feel like if he kind of heated up and played some big minutes for this team, that they would be super dangerous heading into the last couple of weeks here. But he's still a big question mark, I find.
He's got 3 games left to figure it out. And I will say this, when I had a chance to chat with Calgary Surge head coach Nelson Taroba, I know we're talking about that game next, but the one thing that I found really interesting that he told me was the CEBL, in his opinion, is a lot harder and a more skilled league than the G League.
Really?
That is his assessment of the league after coaching for a few years here now. So like when you talk about the G League and the success, the Canadian style from a coach himself, maybe it's not that easy of a transition is what I'm getting at with him. And I'm not trying to defend it, but it was interesting to kind of to hear that, to hear a coach say like, no, this league is better than the G League. Like this is really high quality stuff.
To that point, though, I mean, I'm going to sound like an old man yelling at a cloud, but I find quite often when I watch NBA games, you can kind of tell some of the guys are going through the motions, right? And it's lots of the games are just glorified 3-point shootouts, and some of the aggressiveness that we saw in the 90s from those Knicks teams and whatnot. There's just teams aren't just built that way anymore, right? And the game is just feels a little softer these days, if I'm being frank. But this league, one of my favorite things about it kind of has that old school feel to it. I mean, yeah, these guys are still jacking up a million threes, but like these guys aren't afraid, of no one shying away from contact, especially those games against Saskatchewan. I think I talked about this last week. Like those felt like playoff, like old school playoff games, like both teams, playing hard, right? And on all 5 guys, playing big on defense and stuff too. So that's kind of, I think, one of the most underrated parts of this league is how the style is kind of different from the NBA. Obviously, these guys aren't as talented, and not every single guy on the floor can shoot threes like they can in the NBA. But yeah, that's kind of just something I kind of like about the league. That does kind of feel a little old school, a little bit.
And Taylor, you don't need to be Frank. You can just be Taylor. We love you the way you are.
I could just be Taylor Timothy Allen. Okay.
Taylor Tim Allen, yeah.
Okay.
But I also want to point out before we move on to the Calgary game, you brought up about Montreal. I am getting the sense that playing at Verdun Stadium is its own sense of intimidating. We talk about the crowd in Winnipeg. From what I understand and what we've seen on the webcast, they have a very engaged, loud crowd. It's a more intimate setting. It's a little bit smaller. I've talked to Mo Khan, who's the play-by-play for Montreal, does a great job out in Montreal. It's another good broadcast team out there. And he was saying that, it's pretty fun in there. It's a little bit, I get the sense it's a little grungy, a little gritty. I think it's tough to play in there. I remember EJ joking around. He's been working on his French and trying to understand the French-Canadian chirps and things like that. But I don't think it's a welcoming place to play. I do think that is an advantage for Montreal. They have their own sense of home advantage. That is one of the places, Taylor, I'd love to go watch a game. It's not the as shiny as maybe the Canada Life Center presentation, but I kind of like that underground feel of basketball. So I think that isn't an easy place to play, which is probably why you see some teams having not their best games in Montreal, because it is tough to get there. But they beat Montreal. They get their redemption on one of the losses they wanted back. Guess what? Earlier in the season, they had a tough game against Calgary where they lost. They thought they didn't play well. They had a second chance at getting them at home in front of a second highest record crowd. The Calgary Surge in to Canada Life Center with an 8-0 run to start the game. The 8-0 run, though, Taylor, there was a split second in that game. You're thinking, they're coming out flat. They hit, I think it was 2-3 or a couple threes at least. And maybe a 2-pointer it was. I think that was how it worked out. But it was a couple of big shots to go 8-0. And then all of a sudden, Winnipeg goes on a 29-25 or 29-5 run after that. And basically that was it. There was no coming back for Calgary. That was the most dominant home game at the very least. That was the most dominant game we've seen at Canada Life Center. against the second place team who is still trying to clinch their ticket and still has a chance to overtake first in the West, who is coming off some momentum in terms of beating Montreal and then also beating Winnipeg the last time they played. They were missing some guys for sure, but to Winnipeg's credit, they took full advantage of that, and they went on to win 100-75, a 25-point win. That was just dominant from start to finish. I mean, you were there with me. It was a big Glenn Yang game. It wasn't the Teddy Allen, but hey, Glenn Yang had himself a game on Sunday.
I've been pretty harsh towards Mr. Yang, I will admit, and I'm not gonna step back from that. I think that criticism was pretty fair, and I didn't say he's been god awful, but I just figured he could be bringing a little more to the table considering all the minutes that he's been getting and whatnot. But here we are. 15 points from him. He just looked more confident than I think I've seen him all year, really. And every single time he hit a shot, and he hit quite a few of them, he hit three threes, half of his attempts from the other end of the scores table, or the media table, I should say. From the corner of my eye, I could just see someone kind of looking at me and smirking. I'm like, okay, yeah. So there'd be Joey, just reminding me, like, hey, that's the guy you've been riding pretty hard, and here he is having a big game. He's showing you up. So no, good for him. Yeah, like they need that big time, and it's kind of cool seeing how excited Teddy was for him after the game. So those are the two guys that spoke to the media. And so I was asking Glenn about his game. I said, you scored a season high points. And before I could even finish the question, Teddy kind of jumped in. He's like, oh, right on, man. Like season high points, 15 points. Like, good job. And so yeah, it just kind of goes to show that he's a well-liked, well-respected guy.
Teddy and him seem to have a pretty tight relationship, because even there was the Glenn Yang game, as we've coined that one, the 7 points in target score time, including the winner. And Teddy was the first guy over him. I think Teddy was the first guy. I think that's where the water tradition started, at least at Canada Life Center. I think that was the first time where they started running after guys with the water for the player of the game, which we've come to learn. Teddy Allen hates water.
Not a fan.
Loves to make it splash, does not like being splashed on. That's what we've come to figure out. There's a funny video when I'm interviewing him. They got the social media team. Buddy in Edmonton actually texted me. He's a Stingers fan. He's like, I've never seen someone run away from the Gatorade so frantically in my life. I was like, yeah, he doesn't like the water or the Gatorade, man. Yeah, I know. That's but him and Glenn Yang, they seem to have a bit of a connection there. And you're right, man. Glenn had a heck of a game that day. So looking at his stat line, he had 15 points, 1 steal, 2 assists, couple boards to go about with that. He was 6 for 11 from the field, 3 for 6 from 3-point. That was a game that, and even after the game, when we were in the post game conference, that was the one thing he said. I asked him, is this the game that we should expect to see from Glenn Yang? Is this your building game, your foundation game? And he said definitely. The consistency, finding his shot in this league is something that he wants to work on. He got his taste of it there. But we've seen this before. Where he has this game and he doesn't follow it up, right? So now you've got a few days between games. You're going back to play the exact same team you had this success against, right? So you kind of know what's coming to you that day. So can you replicate it? It'll be very interesting to see if he can. But, hats off to him on a good performance.
Kind of the unfair thing about this league, though, it's only 20 games. So if you have a bad month, you got people like me saying, hey, this guy, what the heck? He's not doing so hot and whatever. But it's like the NBA, like, pretty good players have rough, stretches all the time. But when you have an 82 game season, you can kind of afford a couple weeks where you're maybe not at your best. But for Glenn, yeah, I mean that game was needed big time, and I don't think it's a coincidence that they've won their last 2 games, and in these last 2 games they've had 2 role players, Simon first, now Glenn, really step up and have big games. So Glenn was honest in the post game. He's like, you know what? I really appreciate all the support I've been getting from the team, the coaches, the organization, just trusting in me that, I can play better and I will play better kind of thing. And sure enough, he rewarded their patience. But like you said, yeah, I mean, he did have that one other good game before and he followed up with some pretty slow performances. So we'll see. But yeah, just to put into perspective though, I mean, we're talking a lot about a guy who just scored 15 points, but in the 4 games before that, he had a combined 13 points.
Yeah.
So he really just hasn't been that aggressive on offense, not that confidence on offense. So getting 15 from him is huge.
Yeah, Jelani had another 16 points, another great game from him. Back to, clearly that game against Saskatchewan was a bit of an anomaly for him. Good to see him back on track. EJ Anasike, another guy with 15 points. He only had, Yeah, he only had the 2 boards on that. I thought he would have had more, but yeah, he's 3 for 6. It was an okay game from EJ, but he still putting up his 15, 37 from Teddy Allen. I mean, and the other thing about Teddy Allen, he had 37 points, 4 steals, 5 assists, 5 rebounds. Like that stat line was more decorated than a Christmas tree. Like that was, it wasn't a double-double or anything, but you take all of those stats, 5 or more, 4 more, like on every stat line. Like that was a great, full, complete game from Teddy. Like he was feeling it, even from three-point land. What was he? Yeah, 6 for 14. So the record's 9, right? So he was hitting them pretty. He had a few that he missed towards the end, but he had like 3 or 4 in a row throughout the game before he missed. And, there was a moment in time where I'm thinking, is he going to break these records again? We actually had that conversation at halftime. Like, is this a 42-point night or a 10 3-point night? Like, what are we going to see from Teddy tonight? Because he had such a strong first half, 18 points in the first quarter, really set the tone there. But yeah, just a complete game. Like, it's hard to pick that apart. I mean, I know there was some key people missing, but they did contain. Sean Miller-Moore just had 12 points. He was minus 15. Stefan Smith actually had a pretty good game, 15 points. He was the team's leading scorer on that one, but yeah, Gilder only had 9 points. Guy Edey was 5 points. A lot of guys that were held pretty. Kyler Kelly went down with the injury. Not sure what his status is, but that was late in the game. The game was already well out of reach by that point. But just going back, bench points. Calgary outscored them in bench points, which I was kind of shocked about. But they kept their starters low, right? So it's kind of pick your poison. I don't care if everybody on the bench is scoring, as long as we're scoring more, right? At the end of the day. But yeah, second chance points. They had 19 to Calgary's 12. They had 16 fast break points, which has been better than we've seen in the past. Their biggest lead was 39 points. The biggest lead for Calgary was 8 when they went up 8-0, and then that was it. They had 32 minutes and 45 seconds with lead time. It's a 40-minute game. So they controlled that whole game. We've heard Mike Taylor say, I need my team playing, 25 minimum. 30 to 35 is what you need to win in this league, and he got 32 minutes and 45 seconds like that. I don't even know, this was just a dominant game. It was a dominant game.
That's impressive, all fine and good, and they had a great game and whatnot, but I don't think I think you could really only take so much from this game, just considering who Calgary was missing. I mean, I might be butchering his name. Simi Shitu.
Shitu,
is that right?
And that was that was a big loss. He's the leading
rebounder.
Right? Like that, out of all the loss, that was the biggest one. So he's
Trevin Scott as well. He's a good player.
Yeah,
didn't have him.
Totally right. And I know Shitu wasn't injury related. Personal matter. He was not with the team in Calgary. So a bit of a loss there. And that's what I mean. Like now this Thursday game, not to jump ahead, we'll get into that, but that's going to be a big difference because that's a huge presence in the paint. Chad Posthumous, I think going in, we assumed he was going to have a bigger role in the game. He only had to play 10 minutes and 34 seconds. He didn't do much, didn't need to do much because there was no real paint presence from those guys without him in the lineup. At least not as intense as it would be with Shitu in the lineup. But
I was just curious, do you know why Chad did not play the Montreal game?
Yes. Should have brought that up in the Montreal game. So that was Mike Taylor says that was just an analytical thing. They were a smaller lineup, seemed to work against Montreal. They wanted Steph Ingo because he's a little more mobile. So they wanted him in there for his quickness and his ability to guard the rim. And it played out pretty well. They interviewed Steph after the game, he came in for that purpose. They deactivated Chad for the sole purpose of a game plan. He handled it really well. I talked to him actually before the Calgary game when he was back in the lineup. During that game, he was laughing. He was coming up to the camera while I was doing my hits, smiling into the camera. He was having fun with the mascot and the players, the fans. He was really high spirits. That's got to be tough, man. He's a veteran. This is his team, his city, and to sit out at home had to be tough. Did not appear to be bothered by it beyond the fact that it sucks not playing. Obviously, he's a competitor. He wants to be out there, but he understood the bigger picture. Ingo did what he had to do. I think he had 7 points that game. I can't remember what it was. I don't have the stats in front of me. I can pull that up, though. But yeah, that was solely because of matchups. And Mike Taylor has said that in the past that he would be adjusting his lineups based on smaller, bigger. And the East does play smaller. They're faster. They're noticing now their big man game, which was a strength in the first half, not always a strength in the second half when you're playing some new teams. But yeah, so Stefan Ingo, 8 minutes. He didn't have any points. But he played 8 minutes, 12 seconds. He had 5 rebounds, an assist. So yeah, he had a good game. He was there what he needed to do. He slowed down Montreal.
Well, to your point, I mean, when Simon hits the game-winning shot, Chad is one of the first people to go up and give him a bear hug. Yeah. And then, but that's going to be something to monitor, though. I mean, we've talked about this a bunch. That Chad's kind of an old school type of player, right? The big guy, and he doesn't stretch the floor really, but what he does well, he does well. Yeah, to get deactivated for that one and then only play 10 minutes on Sunday. I mean, we're entering crunch time here, so
I think there
could be more to that story. So we'll see.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see, but I think that was solely they were expecting Shitu in the lineup. That wasn't expected. That was a day Fair. Of. There was no injuries, nothing really pointing to that. So I think, and they don't want to sit him out too long. It's kind of I think he's been dealing with some, not like major injuries, but I think there's some nagging stuff there. So I think he'll take the rest where he can get it, but he wants to play. He wants to play in the playoffs. They've clinched. I don't think he cares right now, but I think that becomes a bigger thing if he's not playing in the playoffs when he feels he could be having an impact, but that is here nor there. So, but before we get on to the games look ahead, let's give a look at, won't call them awards, but we'll see what stood out to us this week. So Taylor, I think we'll just get this one out of the way. You should usually save best for last, but we'll go best player of the week. I don't think there's any question. It's Teddy Allen.
Next question.
All right. What was your surprise of the week?
I don't think I really have a choice. I think I kind of have to go with Glenn Yang after everything everything I kind of said about him. These past couple weeks but he deserved it. He really did. But so I think I have to say he's the surprise of the week. Not that I didn't think he was capable of scoring 15 points ever, but it was how he played. It wasn't necessarily the numbers he put up. Again, I said this before, but just the confidence that he looked like to be playing with. And, he wasn't afraid to shoot the ball. Where there's been other times this year where, he's had some good looks and he just passes the ball. So surprise of the week, I'd have to go with Glenn Yang, but I will say though in the post game he seems like a very nice guy. He's a very well spoken guy. So I did turn around and look at Joey and say, "Damn, like Glenn seems like a good dude." So I did feel like a bit of a jerk, but hey, that's sports journalism, baby. You gotta call it how it is, man.
Yeah, I would say Glenn Yang definitely the surprise of the week. This one I have the supporting cast member of the week. And I'm going to give it to Simon Hildebrandt. I know he didn't have a big second game, only 1 point in the second game, but that was such a big performance in that first game of the week on the Friday night against Montreal. It was crucial in the win. That was coming off his other 19-point game just 2 games earlier. So he's really starting to find consistency. That was his most confident game for sure. He had a dunk attempt that would have just torn the roof off of Canada Life Center. It ended up being a foul as he was going up, but he the confidence in that jump coming up the baseline, he was just looking to flush that and make a poster. So I got to give him that. Do you have a supporting guy that stuck out to you at all? It could be a same guy twice if it needs to be.
Speaking of Simon Hildebrandt and dunking, though, when you open the CEBL app, at least if you click the Sea Bears as your team or whatever, the opening kind of graphic it shows is Simon throwing one down.
They would have had to update it if you got that one for sure.
That's true. Fair enough. If I was him at the bar, I'd be whipping that out every chance I get.
You see this app?
But my supporting player of the week, was that the question?
Supporting guy.
He's not a supporting guy, but I feel everyone talks so much about Teddy that sometimes EJ Hanosika gets overlooked at times. But it seems like this guy could put up, 18 points in his sleep. Yeah. He's been really consistent lately. He hasn't had a dud of a game in a while. Again, I know he's their second best player, so he's not a supporting guy whatsoever.
I have him as my Bear share, right? Like a play on Lions share of the load. Like a guy that just puts in work and he carries a huge load on that team because defensively, and he's he is in the paint all the time. He's guarding guys bigger than him. He's guarding guards at times. He's a stretch four. to me, like, he is your workhorse. Like I would, like, the bear share would be like, if every episode we had, he was probably that guy. Like, he's never I shouldn't say never. He's been your player of the game a few times, but there's Teddy that kind of plays at that level, leading scorer, gets the glory. But EJ's a fan favorite. I actually was talking with some of the staffers from the Sea Bears, and apparently someone has EJ Anasike's name tattooed on their forearm.
Get out.
They
Really?
got him to sign their forearm. I think it was a woman. Signed her forearm, and they got it traced the next day by at a tattoo parlor. So, like, he's a fan favorite. Like, he's a star. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say, but, like, his style of play is just a whole lot different. So I have him as that. But, like, supporting cast, bear share, same kind of deal.
We need to find who that person is and get them on the show.
Oh, buddy, we will track them down. For our listeners, reach out to myself or Taylor, my socials at Joey Slattery CTV, Instagram or Twitter. I don't care. Get at me. Let me know, and we will track this guy down. Taylor, what's yours? It's Taylor Allen 31
at Taylor Allen 31. Twitter, Instagram, Threads. Not that I use that, but
let us know. Lead us there. This is our investigative piece. This is Big J journalism happening on our podcast. Okay, this might be the journalistic accomplishments of our career.
But there has to be more to that story. I'm thinking
there has to be. There has to be. So we got to figure that out for sure. So you have him. The one thing I want to end on too. Funniest moment. Do you have one that sticks out? And no worries if you don't. This is kind of sprung on, but I definitely have one.
I have one as well. This is the only thing that popped into my head when you first asked me.
I know
asked me that. So Michael Okafor,
yes.
He's at the free throw line. There's missing free throws, and then there's missing free throws. This dude bricks free throws. Or brick those 2 free throws. Sorry, not all free throws. It looked like that at halftime. I think it's halftime, or maybe it's whatever quarter break. But anyways, the Sea Bears entertainment people, they bring on a fan to shoot a half-court shot. Well, these people do a fantastic job at finding the least athletic people on the face of the earth, because they haven't found one person that's even hit the backboard. I'm not saying I'd make that shot, but I could slam one, crank one off the backboard, no problem, right? But these people, they barely even get it into the key, basically. And it's like, oh my goodness. So anyways, that was kind of what Michael Okafor's free throws looked like. And I was like, oh boy, those are kind of ugly, but whatever. He does his thing on defense. He contributes in other ways.
Okay, I feel awful,
And then sure enough.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, sure enough, then maybe a play later, 2 plays later, he drills a corner 3, just an absolute textbook shot. 4-point play, gets fouled in the process as well. And so this play happens, and then I had to do a double take. It's like, was that Michael Okafor? The guy who literally just bricked these 2 free throws terribly, and sure enough it was. So hey, full credit to him, because if I miss 2 free throws that bad, I don't know if I'd have that much confidence 10 seconds later to shoot a contested corner 3, but he did, and he drilled it, so power to him. I thought that was hilarious and actually super impressive as well.
I've been hard on Michael Okafor. He was my disappointment in the midseason because offensively, because I have no problem with his defense. This guy's an incredible defender, but offensively, he's kind of been a bit of a letdown. One of the Canadians that could step up for sure. And I hate to pile on him, but I'm going to pile on him because there was also another hilarious play against Calgary. I want to say, who was he up against in that one? I want to say it was Edie that he went on. So it's a fast break. And he dribbles the ball. He takes it over the foul line, and he jumps like he is going to Russell Westbrook poster a guy, and it was nowhere near the rim. And he gets up, he hits the ground hard, he gets up smiling. Edie's just like, what was that? Like, what were you trying? I think even on the broadcast, like, well, I don't know what the end goal was with that play. It was just so funny. And he gets up, he goes right to the guy, and just like Okafor does, and he goes and smiles at him, and just kind of laughing as they're getting ready for the inbound, because it was Winnipeg ball. But it was I felt so bad, but it was just such a funny moment, because we talk about that confidence in Simon Hildebrandt's dunk attempt. This one had maybe more swag to it, but just like it fell well short. So that was my funniest moment. Good job, Taylor. Really quickly, we're running low on time here. Let's take a look at the games ahead. So now the Winnipeg Sea Bears on the road for a pair before they end the season at home. Expected to be a huge sellout for that one as well. A lot of excitement after these last 3 games with playoffs amping up. But big one first. Let's focus on this one. Calgary and Sea Bears, the rematch. It's a home and home. It takes place Thursday, 8 o'clock Central Time in Calgary. I imagine Calgary having to let this soak for a few days, not probably looking forward to this one.
Yeah, that's an understatement. I mean, sadly, we don't. I don't think we. You don't know if those guys are back for Thursday, do you?
I don't know if they are. That changes things drastically. Last time they played, it was on June 18th. That was the first game these two teams ever played. It was in Calgary. Calgary won 97-81. Usual suspects, except because Trayvon Scott was in that one, 22 points. Sean Miller-Moore had a much better game with 21, 6 boards, 5 assists. Simi Shitu, 12 points, 8 boards. He wasn't in this game. Mason Berthier had a bigger role that game too. He's a guy I really like, actually. He's we talk about 6-man with Jelani. I don't think he's at that echelon yet, but he's an interesting guy. Another Canadian. And the thing about Calgary, man, they're all Canadian. Like, all of their key guys, like Shitu, Canadian, Miller-Moore, Canadian, Boursier, Canadian. And like they don't have depth Canadian players. Like, they got some top talent in this country, and it's really great to see. But Boursier is a guy off the bench that's been playing really, really well. He has an interesting story. Real quick side note. Apparently, when he transferred from UBC to Trinity Western, where he finished his career just last year. This is his first year out of U Sports. He said he ran into a homeless guy in LA. He was practicing his shots on an outdoor court. He said he hated the game at the time. He was a perfectionist, a lot like my friend Taylor Allen, but he was a perfectionist, really like stiff, he said, just couldn't get a shot. His shot wasn't falling, and this homeless guy comes up to him and says, "Hey, you look like you're a really good basketball player, but dude, you have to relax. Just have fun." He said that is what changed his whole mindset. He became a better player since. He models his game a bit after Russell Westbrook. He says he became Mr. Triple-Double at Trinity Western before coming here. And he said this year is his first year where he really feels like he's belonged, because he had 2 years as a U Sports guy. This year he feels, nope, I belong here, and he's been showing it, so I really like that. But they had a big outing. And then you look at the other hand, Chad Posthumous probably had the best game that night. He had a 15 points, 15 boards. So I think that's what they're going to need from Chad this time around. And if Simi Shitu and Scott are back, then yeah, you're going to need that. So I don't know if they're back, but I think there's no question. It's just a matter of your bigs have to play big, and you have to guide them into your style of basketball if you're Winnipeg. You can't fall into Winnipeg's trap, because at home, they're pretty good.
If Winnipeg wins this game, though, they are officially the number 1 team in the Western Conference.
Yeah, and that locks,
pretty cool.
That locks your home advantage for the one home playoff game before heading out to championship weekend.
Right, but I guess the frustrating part of that is like, okay, hooray, we won our conference, but then it's like, and Vancouver gets to leapfrog us and have the bye to the semifinal,
which
so that kind of
sucks. But the other thing too is that's who they play. So yeah, let's just wrap up there. So they play in Calgary. I think that's the big game, just because there's not so much on the line. Here's the thing: they've clinched. They're more than likely going to finish first. When you look, they have a game against Vancouver in Vancouver, won last time, a team they've already played 3 times and beat every time. And at this point, worst case scenario, you don't get home advantage, but it looks like it's going to be really hard at this point not to lock that up. This is a time for them to work on things. They get a hungry Calgary team. I think the biggest win out of this one is just putting yourself in situations to see how your guys react. Like Mike Taylor was saying, figure out, if there's anything you have to work on in the meantime. Guys that need more playing time against, higher intensity, these are your games, right? So this will be a big game in that sense, because you're right. At the end of the day, you've clinched, right? Like, we can't say these are big games anymore. Like, this is all just building up to the playoffs. But
if you're a Sea Bears fan, though, right now you're also a Niagara River Lions fan, because Ottawa plays Niagara their next 2 games, the first one being this upcoming Thursday, then they play again on Sunday. So if Niagara can do Winnipeg a solid here and win one, if not both of those, things could get really interesting for that last game. And who knows, the Winnipeg has a chance to maybe grab that first overall spot, which would then get them a semifinal spot.
And you look at that game too, like we were talking about MVP race, like Khalil Ahmad, like if he can get Niagara up into the standings and get into the playoffs. Like, that guy is super entertaining to watch for Niagara. And having a couple of wins against Ottawa helps his case there too, and that puts him into the conversation because there's another guy who I think is absolutely fantastic.
And they're 9-7, right? So that's not an easy, home and home for Ottawa by any stretch of the imagination. And then they close out against Vancouver, and I know they haven't been that impressive, but really this is a league where anyone could beat anyone on any given night. So
And the thing sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I wouldn't, use your Sharpie marker and write down Ottawa's name in the semifinals just yet. The Sea Bears still have a chance, but they probably got to win out.
And I don't know what is happening in Vancouver, because I think they're a really good team. Like, kind of like even more so than Saskatchewan. Like I was saying, Saskatchewan's record, they've had some tough losses. I don't know what the problem is in Vancouver. Like, Georgie B is one of the best players in this league, right? Like, he's a 7-footer that shoots threes, great rebounder, playmaker. Nick Ward is one of the most dominant guys in this league. Even you look at Diego Mafios, another U Sports guy who, is going to be in the conversation for U Sports Player of the Year along with Simon Hildebrand. He's from the University of Victoria, playing close to home. I just don't understand. Alex Campbell is a coach. Like, he coaches at the University of Saskatchewan as an assistant. These are guys that can play. Like, I'm shocked. And I think here's the thing about Vancouver and why you can't write them off. They're going to make it. They don't want to go into that tournament losers of 3-4 whatever straight, right? Like, they need to start building some momentum if they want to make their impact count in that Final Four, and a win against Winnipeg will do that. I think they're going to be looking for an off-guard Winnipeg, already clinched, already top spot, and roll over them. I don't think it's going to be an easy game with Vancouver, even though they're already in and they've had a terrible season. They have a Memorial Cup chance, and what I mean by that is they're the host team that gets in. It's weird for a pro sport to do that, but it's a unique opportunity, and at the end of the day, they don't ask how, they ask how many. And if you get that one championship, they're not going to ask how you did it. No one will remember that in years' time. It's just that when you look at that trophy and that little maple leaf with your team and year on, it just says Vancouver Bandits 2023 if they were to win. Not, hey, but they got to buy, So they're hungry. Don't kid yourself. I think they're going to come out flying for that one. And then after that, they just have one game left, and that is the home game against Edmonton. That'll be a big game because Edmonton and Calgary have been neck and neck. Who knows what it turns out to like that. We won't get too much into that because we'll have another podcast before that game comes out, and we'll have a pretty good one because we'll only have one game to preview before getting into the playoffs. But do you have any closing remarks, Taylor Timothy Allen?
Closing remarks? No, not really. Just, I just think Winnipeg Sea Bears fans should be, be feeling pretty grateful right now that the fact that they're getting to watch some meaningful basketball down the home stretch here, because not every expansion team has found this success this early on, right? So it doesn't even matter where they end up. It's been a pretty cool seeing what this team has accomplished, and they have everything that they could ever ask for is still in front of them, right? And I think they're in good shape, man. Like they really got a shot to win this thing, and that would be such a cool story, this first year team, Winnipeg's return to pro basketball in 20 something years, and they win a 10-team league, and something that no one predicted, no one would have saw coming. So yeah, I think there's just so many storylines to follow in the next couple of games, next couple of weeks, that this is an exciting time to be a basketball fan. So stick around, keep listening to Target Score Weekly. We'll be breaking it all down. I'm looking forward to it, man. But yeah, just Thursday's going to be a fun game, though, seeing how Calgary bounces back. That'll be something to watch for sure.
I'm looking forward to that. Shout out to the fans that were wearing Celtics gear over the last two games. There was a lot of Celtics fans in the stands I saw, and I was pretty pumped about that. I got to fist bump a few. Love to see it. And also, just shout out to the fans that have come up and said hi, asked for pictures, stuff like that. I love that, man. Come say hi if you're at the games. I always got a little time before or after the game, things like that. It's been awesome, this whole experience with the sideline reporting and, seeing so I was asked, the Sea Bears did a little thing, ask me anything, like ask Joey anything. And one of the questions was like, what's been the most fun part about covering a new team? And I think my favorite part and my answer was like the culture that's been built here. The diehard fans, we've talked about now, like it's not just guys and girls figuring this out if they like it, whatever. It's people coming out to games as true diehard fans. So yeah, if you're out at the games, come say hi. Love that. If you say you listen to the pod, bonus points for sure. Tell your friends about it again. subscribe, review. That all helps us out. We'll be back next week with another episode of Target Score Weekly. Should probably know the name of my own podcast. But thank you so much for listening. Enjoy these next 2 games. Thursday, July 20th, the Sea Bears take on the Surge. Sunday, July 23rd, a late one, 9 p.m. Central against Vancouver. We'll see you next week with a review on that and the last game preview of the season. Until then, enjoy your week. Thank you for listening to the Target Score Weekly podcast. To stay up to date with Winnipeg Sea Bears and CEBL news, as well as future episode releases, follow Joey and Taylor on Twitter and Instagram at TaylorAllen31 and at Joey Slattery CTV. And wherever you're getting the podcast, be sure to subscribe to never miss an episode.